Okay, well, here we are. Again, another After the Buzzer here at Hive State Hockey. My name is Keith Schertz. Welcome to After the Buzzer. And, oh, baby. Anyway, if this is your first time here, welcome very much. Hope you enjoy hanging out with us. Please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up on the video if you're enjoying the content. Tell your friends about us if you're having a good time with us. If you are a returning viewer like our friend Car Wash in the chat, and I'm sure a couple others that will come along through the night, welcome back. Terrific to see you here, and I congratulate you on your exceedingly fine taste. Okay, wow. Well, it's one of those where they took the drama out of it pretty quickly, didn't they? Utah Hockey Club loses emphatically tonight to the Edmonton Oilers and get swept in the season series against Edmonton. A 4-3 loss earlier in the season on November 29th. A New Year's Eve loss 4-1 in Edmonton. And tonight 7-1 against the Edmonton Oilers to finish 0-3 this year against Edmonton. So there's a long way to go for this Utah Hockey Club. But, obviously there's tons and tons of quality and class over on the Edmonton Oiler roster. And obviously it turned up in a really, really significant way tonight. And I guess the question that I wonder ultimately about Utah Hockey Club after watching the drubbing, the disaster, is about the goalkeeping. How do you think goalkeeping went tonight for Utah Hockey Club? In my opinion, this was a game that was kind of coming. You cannot work a goalie 11 straight games where you have, 4 games in 7 nights, and you're just going to go veggie. There is an expiration date on those veggies. It turns out that there is an expiration date on the veggies. You can play it too much. You can go to the well too much. And then the other part of this whole scenario is then you put in poor Jackson Stauber, and now he's playing against some of the best offensive players in the league. He's playing against a very good offense in Edmonton that is just being thrown in the deep end instead of having time to really prepare and think you're going to go. To get thrown in mid-game and come in. He had a couple times where it looked pretty rough there in the second, and yeah. So it was one of those. I actually think about the coach a lot. I think about Andre Tourné. I think about his riding with Veggie. It's been a topic of our stream here, is to try to figure out how much of a workload you could give to Karel Vejmelka before it turned the other way. The other thing too is the whole team looked flat. Again, it's an interesting thing. This 3-game road trip that they played at Seattle, they lose. They go to Seattle, they lose that game. That's a game they really needed to go and get. But their eyes were already on the game at Vancouver. They played the Vancouver game and came away with a really big win against the Canucks. And then it was like, because that was in the rearview mirror, because they put all their emotion into that one, this team just did not look ready to roll tonight. Just did not look ready to roll in any way, shape, or form. It seemed like Utah Hockey Club was so wildly unprepared for tonight's game. They all looked pretty exhausted. They all looked pretty beat up. They all looked not ready to go, right? Not ready to go. Not in a position to play their best hockey of the season against a team where you definitely have to play really good hockey to come away with a great result. So So yeah, 7-1, statistically worst loss in the history of the franchise. I don't believe we've lost by 6 goals at any other point in the history of the franchise. And we'll have to wait until season number 2 to pick up our first win against the Edmonton Oilers. So, yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there's a whole ton to say about it. I didn't think that anybody was particularly good tonight. Sean Durzi gets his goal. A lot of traffic in front. Took a little deflection off the shoulder of an Oiler defenseman. Found its way into the net. Yeah, this was just not a night where it looked like very much made sense. Ugly. I mean, it's just an ugly game. Really. It's just, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it other than, if Vejmelka is not 100% because he's played so many games, and then you get Jackson Stauber in there, and now he's playing the Edmonton freaking Oilers, like, you can't let Edmonton just go through the neutral zone unabated. You can't let them, continue to split your 2 defensemen and just get straight to the net and get chance after chance after chance and goal after goal. You know what you're playing against when you play against Edmonton. They're always looking for a quick breakout pass that hits somebody who's already skating through the neutral zone with speed, who then can try to get a breakaway opportunity on net. Man, there were like 5 or 6 just clean breakaway opportunities with like a rescue mode, full-on desperate move by a Utah defenseman to try to recover. I mean, it was a masterclass in all the stuff that you are afraid of when you play in Edmonton, and then you just give up the thing. And by the way, I mean, it's not like it's easy to stop. It's very hard to stop these things. There's a reason Edmonton is known for that style of hockey and that they've won so many games and they've been so effective with that style of hockey. It's also the reason why, until last season, because they've never really been a forechecking team and because they've been so interested in trying to get offense on the rush and getting transition going through the neutral zone as quickly as they can, those looks tend to dry up when it comes playoff time. And as teams are really prepared for it and they sit back and they put in a system and they do things to make your life miserable, that puts you in a spot to potentially stop or handle those things. So for instance, Edmonton, if they get Los Angeles, if they get the Kings in the playoffs, that could be a very difficult matchup for Edmonton. They should advance. They probably will advance, but I don't know. I mean, the Kings with that 1-3-1 neutral zone, the way that they run it, their effectiveness at that, the way that they can maybe potentially slow down Edmonton a little bit, that's the way it goes. The other one is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I believe, scored a goal against Utah Hockey Club in all 3 games this year. So in the early running for biggest Utah Hockey Club killer is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. He's had a really good season against Utah this year. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, so yes. So, everything that anybody, a hack like me, if I would have been making a game plan to deal with Edmonton, we would have talked about those things. I'm certain Utah did talk about those things, and yet just fully effective. I mean, just giving Edmonton all the stuff that they love, what they want as they go through. They won in every facet. Obviously on 5-on-5, big winners tonight, 5-on-5. Just no question the skill and ability that they played with tonight in 5-on-5 made them dominant in that circumstance. They were more effective and led on the scoreboard when they were shorthanded. The only time they didn't have the advantage over Utah is when they had the power play. So, okay, that's weird. But they won when they were shorthanded. They won at even strength. and they tied us with the power play. Yeah, not a whole lot else to say about this game other than sometimes you got to put it away, but it's obviously evidence in my mind of this team being young and this team not putting in the requisite effort and attention to detail, and clearly like the nightly bring it quality that you got to bring in the NHL, because that was a great win against Vancouver, and they should have felt good after that one. I felt good after that one. But clearly, they went into Edmonton, and they had a very difficult time dealing with the Oilers. So the Oilers get that done. It's time, I think, just to put that one aside. And, if you're the general manager, if you're Bill Armstrong, if you're the coach, Andre Tourné, if you are fans like us, the real question for Utah Hockey Club is, can you just flush that one away and rebuckle up? You've got 14 games remaining. You got cleaned out. Against the Edmonton Oilers. The gap after a season sweep against the Oilers, who were Western Conference champions, Stanley Cup finalists last year, the gap that this franchise needs to grow was made very, very, very clear tonight. Very clear. And then when you do all the scoreboard watching, because Utah's got to do all the scoreboard watching, literally everything went bad for Utah tonight. St. Louis Blues get a win over the Predators 4-1. Calgary gets the win over the New York Rangers 2-1. And the Vancouver Canucks are beating the league-leading Winnipeg Jets 5-2 in the third period with 13 minutes remaining. So literally, every single result for all of the other teams that we're watching on the scoreboard went the way Utah didn't need it to go, and then they lose 7-1. So it's a really rotten day. After probably the best day in the history of the franchise, best day of the season. This is definitely a low point for this, and so hopefully they can flush it. Sparky, welcome to the stream. And let's see if they can just move past this one and have it go in that direction. Wanted to just quickly go over a couple things that I had looked up because I got curious. According to Evolving Hockey, this season the best player in terms of expected goals. So this isn't necessarily including what they do in their playmaking. We're just talking about when it comes to finishing and to finding a way to score as many goals as you can. The highest expected goals, meaning best opportunity to put the puck in the back of the net, that has been Barrett Hayton. This has been something that has been true. And by the way, I could have given you 5-6 guesses had you not looked. I don't know you would have ever said Barrett Hayton, but they expected goals. Barrett Hayton should be at 26. He is at 17. One of the things about Barrett Hayton over the last few years is that this is a trend that he gets a lot of pretty good opportunities, and from an expected goal standpoint, he gets high danger scoring chances. He gets to the slot. He creates havoc in front. He's got great rebounds, his redirects, all of those things. He gets a lot of opportunities to score and is not finishing them at the level that you would hope. He's a whole, like the way you think about Barrett Hayton is like a whole. I think he's very good, and he's a really good player. He was signed to a 2-year extension, $4.5 million for those next 2 years. He's made $4.5 million this year. He'll get $4.5 million again. We're gonna need to extend him or decide what we're gonna do next season with him. But 26 expected goals. He's only scored 17. That is a 9-goal deficiency. You look at Clayton Keller, all scenarios. He's got 24 goals this year. His expected goals at 23. So there you go. Nick Schmaltz at 18.85 expected goals. He's got 16 on the season. Dylan Guenther, 24 goals, 18.5 expected goals for him. Logan Cooley, 18 goals with 14.7 expected goals. So again, the finishing for these guys is all on the positive, all in the way that you would want to see the finishing of these like young goal scorers. The question is how do you get Barrett Hayton to actually put the chances that he's getting into the back of the net? This is a trend. If we look at his previous seasons, this has been true of Barrett Hayton in previous seasons as well. So, really, really kind of an interesting thing to take a look at as it relates to the development of Barrett Hayton. He's clearly, as of right now, in terms of scoring and creating opportunities, he is doing the most of any of the centers on the team. He's giving you more chances to put goals on the scoreboard more than Logan Cooley. He's done more than Clayton Keller, according to the advanced stats. I mean, he is 3 goals ahead of Clayton Keller as it relates to expected goals this season. And yet he's got 17 goals on the year. So we got to find a way to get the opportunities, the chances that come out of Barrett Hayton. He's just got to find a way to improve that. If that's something he turns around, and again, if he had 26 goals, like if he was on track with his expected goals, Barrett Hayton would be looking at being like a $7.5 million player next year, maybe an $8 million player. But I think, and if he turns into that, Utah's going to have to make some pretty hard choices. But to find a great center who can score at that level, it's an interesting one. But to have the advanced stats love you, but the actual stats not love you as much, just shows that he's getting lots of opportunities. He's just not putting them in. Okay, Scott, don't know if Veggie can be faulted on some of those goals. I mean, look, the shorty, it was a clear walk-in for Nugent Hopkins straight at him. The Zach Hyman goal was, obviously it was a classic Zach Hyman goal, just like, short range, like no time to react. It's like pure positioning. That's the scenario with that one. And then the McDavid goal was obviously all the speed coming through the neutral zone and coming down on him. I agree with you in terms of Veggie. If you give away high danger chances, like it's a whole lot easier for other teams to score. I did criticize Veggie a little, but what I'm really criticizing is that we've overworked him. It's just, this was his, he played 11 straight games. Believe tonight was his 12th before getting pulled. That just is a workload that just does not need to see. So there we go. Yeah, pretty interesting. Let me see. Let me address a couple of the other things. He does need to finish better. Thank you, Sparky, on that. We agree. And then, Scott, good to see you again. Seemed like Michelli was scratched tonight. Yeah, I think he was, right? If he was in that game. But I'm pretty sure he was scratched. Wasn't he scratched? Yeah, I mean, we got Nick Bukestad in. So, yeah, I don't think he played tonight. So, again, we're back to, what do we want to do about Matias Michelli? I don't know. We're obviously, they've made their peace. We're going to see how it shakes out the rest of the year. Load management's a thing for goalies. It just is. All the stats show that you've got to get a rest, that you can't play a guy. You can't play a guy that much. Honestly, like, anytime you get more than 80% of your starts going to one guy, it starts to overwork that player a little bit. So with 14 games remaining, like, they probably need to pick at least 2 of them and give them to Jackson Stauber. And give Jackson Stauber a better opportunity to perform, because if he's prepared and he knows he's going to go, then it gives you a chance. Now, here's where they are. 14 games left. They're sitting on 71 points. Their maximum total of points that they can get to is 99. 99. Before the season began, I actually did a prediction of all of the games for Utah Hockey Club. My prediction for them at this point of the season is that they would be at 71 points. They are at 71 points. My model picked them to finish with 87 points. They are not. They are on track to get to that 87 points, but they will not make the playoffs if they score 87 points. They need to get more than that. My models, just so you know, as I've been picking and as it takes a look, I picked every single game before the year with this model that I had. And my models right now have Utah at 87, Calgary will finish with 88, Vancouver will have 90, and St. Louis will get to 88. So my model says Vancouver. But when it's 87, 88, 88, 90, like, there is room to make up ground. But it also means that Utah needs to play, their best hockey of the rest of the season. And the number that I've identified, and I stand by it, is that 91. They got to get to 91 points with 14 games remaining. They got to win 10 of the last 14. It would be their best stretch of hockey. All season long. It would be better than what my model has suggested. My model's been pretty decent so far this season. But yeah, there we are. Okay, I love this. So Scott comes in. He likes the game. So he likes Stauber in the next game against Buffalo in the homestand. I don't mind that. At all. Although, and again, this is one of the great debates. And then you like at Chicago to finish out the road trip. That's good. When I talked to Sparky about this, one of the places Sparky landed is you throw Stauber in there against the better teams and then Veggie against the worst teams to ensure that you're definitely taking home the 2 points against the team that you should clean up against. So, yeah. The other issue with that is if you go Buffalo, Chicago, then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in a row to close out the year for Veggie. But again, Veggie could probably handle that, but it becomes really a fascinating choice to make the rest of the way. So I don't know what we'll see for this team, but let's just take a look over here. And yeah, it's still Vancouver 5, Winnipeg. Oh no, let me update it. Yeah, 5-2, 5 minutes left. Vancouver over Winnipeg. Ugh. What a disaster. Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways to think about it. You either play Stauber against weaker opponents and then hope Veggie can steal a game against teams you're not expected to win. So, that's one way to think about it, and it certainly makes sense. There's the other way to think about it where you play your backup against the best teams. You're likely to lose those games anyway. You let those games go by the wayside, and then you ensure that you're picking up points in scenarios where you must pick up points. So it'll be interesting. They got to win 10. I'm in my bones. Everything I've studied on this, as I've put way too much brain power into this, as I've neglected my family and friends. Okay? 91 points. If they get to 91 points, Utah gets in. If they score any less than that, they will not get in. So they have to go 10-4. Have to. Or if they lose more than that, they got to pick up loser points. I'll just go over the list real quick. Last year, the lowest points to get in the playoffs last year was 91. That was the Washington Capitals. The year before, 92, Florida Panthers. 97 for the Nashville Predators was the low to get in 2021 and 22. That's the highest total. And then I have it back, anyway, 90 points for the 2018. There's the COVID seasons that were shortened. Then full 82 season, 82 game season. 90 points for Colorado was able to get in 18-19. 95 points for Colorado in 17-18. 94 points were scored by the Flames and Nashville Predators to get in 16-17. Previous year is the lowest total since 2010. But the Minnesota Wild got in at 87 points in 2015 and 16. But there was no chase. There was nobody around. There were a bunch of teams tanking underneath Minnesota. Minnesota was not being pushed in that playoff chase. Anytime there's teams going all in to try to make the playoffs, the way there's 4 right now trying to do that, it always results in this kind of push into the 90s. Calgary Flames, 97 points. The year before that, 91 points for Dallas, 92 points for Washington Capitals and Ottawa Senators. There was the strike year, and then 93 points for the New York Rangers back in 2010 and 11. The point is that you've got to, your number pretty much always needs to start with a 9 in order to get in, except for the one outlier year in 2015-16, Minnesota. But again, that season and the race for the playoffs does not match in any way, shape, or form with what the competitive landscape of the 2024-2025 hockey season looks like this time. Utah is going to have to go on an absolute heater down the stretch. So they had 15 games left. We had said last time they could go 10-5. They used one of their losses tonight. So now they got to go out and find their way through it. And it all starts against the Buffalo Sabres. Now, Buffalo is a team. Yeah, you could play Stauber against Seattle or Nashville. Yeah. And I like that as a home game. I like that. Hey, have you guys seen... Yeah, St. Louis does have a nice journey. They don't have very many playoff teams down the stretch. And as you mentioned last time, you like Jim Montgomery. Good coach. Did a lot of great things for the Bruins. I think that... I was going to say, I heard a thing. I heard that the goalies do not like playing in the Delta Center. Here's why. The Delta Center right now has the lower bowl seats on the ends because the ice goes so far into where the seats are when the Jazz are playing. That what happens is all those seats have been pushed back and folded. And then they put that black curtain over it, or black signage that's up. And there's a couple, Utah Hockey Club logos that are on that, the wall of black that's behind. And apparently that some of the shots, if it's shot wide, outside the dots, it doesn't come into play because the background is a crowd and people. But if shots come from the point in between the dots and the goalie is looking that way, the background is a big black wall. And if you have a black puck flying at you, apparently that puck sometimes blends in with the background. And so it can be a little tricky from time to time for the goalies as they're trying to see the puck come to the net. And so there have been times, I think this season, and as you'll watch it, there will be a time or two where the goalie may miss it. Now, the other good news on this is obviously it affects both teams, but one of the things that, is also true is that if the puck is blending in with that black background, the puck is probably above the crossbar. And so it's likely to be high. But my understanding is that there's been some visibility problems for the goalies as they play in the Delta Center. If the puck is shot in between the dots or coming in from the slot, on occasion, they've lost where it is with that background back there. So, I like that. So in instances where they flip it in or things like that. But my understanding is that this has been reported by some of the goalies. That the goalies struggle a little bit in Delta Center. So kind of a interesting, kind of unique peculiarity that would not exist in any other arena. That is a very, specific to Utah thing. And it's one of those, if the home goalies get used to it, then maybe it's an advantage. Or maybe next year that background, there's a chance that background is that light blue Utah Hockey Club color instead of black. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Or whatever they are next year, Mammoth. So, anyway, a couple things to kind of think about, just things to chew on as we go the rest of the way. So tonight, disaster in every way, from a scoreboard watching standpoint, from the standpoint of what happened on the ice. Everything went bad. So, there isn't a whole lot to say other than, let's move on, flush it away, and hopefully the Utah Hockey Club can rebound and get it together. And again, this is part of the maturation. If you are being, Bill Armstrong, is it 6'2" now? Thanks, Sparky. Oh, no. 6'2" is an empty netter? Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you, Winnipeg. I guess you want to play Vancouver or St. Louis, huh? All right, Winnipeg. We get it. It's fine. That being said, astonishing result. I mean, Winnipeg's got one of the best defensive. They've always been a pretty good offensive team, and then this year they've really turned on the defense and have supported Hellebuck. In the past, they've just wanted Hellebuck to be the defense, and it's worked. It's worked. But now they're playing a little defense in front. They're not giving up as many high danger chances. They're defending the slot a whole lot better. And bang, here they are, right? So to give up 6, that is kind of a crazy result. And Hellebuck started. So what a wild one. Yeah, the St. Louis-Vancouver game on Thursday, that'll be big. That'll be big. If you're curious, the model selects St. Louis in that game. So I my rudimentary magic algorithm that I made up and tried to make sense of, it basically looked at like what the Vegas future odds were. It looked at rest and how much rest teams will have in different scenarios. I made a rough adjustment for how often you'd have a backup goalie in versus a starting goalie. Yeah, it had a few problems. I didn't do enough to try to maybe adjust for what the trade deadline might do to some teams because it's not been as good since the trade deadline, if we're being honest. It hasn't been as strong because some teams get much stronger at the trade deadline, and then teams that are not good, who have some assets but know that they're years away, give away the players that are at least decent, that get a result for them from time or two. So the worst teams get worse and the best teams get better. And so there's a need to make an adjustment for that in the future. But for now, that's what it looks like. yeah, that will be a big game, and not gonna lie, it's a very tough road. Yeah, it is. It's a tough road, especially because the first. I mean, like you're gonna need tiebreakers too. So it's not a tough road. In my opinion, they can get there. It's a tough road to go 10-4. That's a really hard thing to do. If they do go 10-4, they probably just find their way in. They probably just play their way into it. And if they win that many games, it improves their tiebreakers. But the current tiebreaker scenario, too, is like a really difficult because the first tiebreaker is regulation wins, and they are behind by 3 games to Calgary, to St. Louis, and to Vancouver. So again, they're going to need to have 3 nights that Calgary, Vancouver, and St. Louis melt down, and then Utah win in that circumstance. But in that circumstance, Utah can vault themselves into the playoffs just by virtue of points, you know. So that's kind of the thing. But the first tiebreaker is a real problem right now. It's a real problem. Points are just going to have to do it because they've had a lot of overtime games, and they've been able to pick up a lot of loser points, right? So, but regulation wins right now they're in a lot of trouble because St. Louis, Calgary, and Vancouver have 25 regulation wins. Utah has 22. So that is the first tiebreaker. That is a bad scenario for Utah Hockey Club. So really, their way out of this is just to play lava hot. I'm telling you. They got to go 10-4. They just got to go 10-4. There you go. Yeah, well, the Jazz are done. Yes, they are. Yeah, this is like the worst Jazz team I think ever. I think the max that you can play Stauber is 3 times. I agree, but at the same time, yeah, I think but it's funny. The max they should play him is 3. Agree with that. I think the minimum they got to play him is 2. You know, I think they got to get him a couple starts. I think they have to give Veggie a chance to stay fresh and crispy. All right. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what these are. Okay. Then the next piece. Yeah. And that, or maybe that's the other way, is you just go down and you play Veggie and maybe you do. You only play Veggie like one more, or you only play Stauber one more game, or maybe you see, if Veggie, hey, you got 40 minutes off tonight. That means you could play the last 14 games, right? Hope so. We'll see. Probably not. That wouldn't be advisable. But they probably need to take care of that. No. I think Ingram is going to be done for the rest of the year. So I mean, it's a good question. I should look up that specifically. If you go on the NHL Player Assistance Program, are you able to leave the Player Assistance Program at any time and rejoin the team? Potentially, you could come back but I believe once you join Player Assistance, like your diagnosis, like you need to have a clean bill of health. Like if you're there for like addiction recovery, you have to have demonstrated that your addiction recovery is there. That's not why Connor Ingram is there. Connor Ingram obviously is there for his mental health, but I think in order for him to get out, his therapists are going to have to say he's in a position to manage his difficulties. So it is a sad story, and that's where we're at. Okay, the other thing I think that we should talk about before we sign off tonight, and it's the big question I think to kind of ask at this time is, here they are in the stretch run of the season. You can tell, obviously, that there's some deficiencies with this team. Part of this is youth. I mean, the yo-yoing back and forth. Big win and then a loss. And a big win and a loss. I mean, this thing that they're doing right now where they're winning and losing every other game, it's not helping the cause, right? They won before they went to Seattle, then they lost to Seattle, then they win at Vancouver, and then they lose at Edmonton, and now they're going to come play Buffalo and probably win, but then they'll play Tampa at home, probably lose. Play Detroit at home, probably win, then go to Tampa Bay and lose, and then probably lose at Florida. But the point is they're doing this yo-yo, and it's like somebody on a crash diet, right? I mean, they're just going back and forth. Like we are the Atkins diet team right now. We're just looking slim and sexy, and then putting on another freshman 15 just like that. Maybe Stauber 4 games, but it's a gamble. But unless they are eliminated by then, yeah. And so I'm paying attention to the top total points that they can score. So they're at 89, or the most that they could score is 99. But again, realistically, we're looking at them at probably getting 87 points. So it's not going to be until Utah's not officially going to be out of this thing until there's 4 or 5 games left, if they ever are, until the last couple games left. If things go badly, they could be out by the time they play Winnipeg or something like that. But they should be in the mix here for a little while. But the real question is this. So here they are going down the stretch. And by the way, I could see Stauber for 4, but like you say, it's a gamble. But again, if we're being realistic and they need this 10-4 mark and they play Stauber for 4, the thing is Stauber's got to steal you a game. The team's got to really rally around Jackson and find a way to do it. He's just got to get really hot. I think tonight is not a great example on what we should use, as we think about the quality of player Jackson Stauber is. I also don't think you should use the game where he got the shutout against the Vegas Golden Knights. But, the answer is he's probably a guy that's actually an 88% save percentage kid. Given where he is right now, he's a rookie. It's his first NHL action. I think it's reasonable to think that he'll go out there and save 87 to 88%. Obviously, an average NHL goalie is at 90%. So could he go out and give you a 91, 92% save game? I think so. And so if we're gonna make the playoffs, we need a heroic night from Jackson Stauber. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is one of the games that we play him, if it's only 2, one of those 2 games, he needs to be awesome. He needs to have a really great game. If he has 3, he'll have to do that, and that'll work. The lone bright spot tonight, Sean Dozu getting a goal in the back of the net. Was good to see him. Obviously, he continues to kind of come back in the fray. He's had a couple rough nights recently. Tonight, also rough. The amount of breakaways that teams got and times our blue liners got split through the neutral zone was outrageous. It's literally the thing that we know that Edmonton wants to go and accomplish, and they did it over and over and over again tonight. So, was not great. Okay. The only other thing I guess I wanted to ask you guys while I have you here, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit next time after they play Buffalo. And when is the Buffalo game? My brain just doubted. When do they play Buffalo? Is that on... that's Thursday. Oh, boy. Woo! Okay, we're back at it again Thursday night against the Buffalo Sabres. Yeah, so, okay, but one of the things that I think is worth talking about is okay, so Bill Armstrong, Tournay, they've definitely looked at the scenario, and they're not playing Matias Michelli. The whole point of the season was to have the young guys have these really exciting games that are going to come along and get a chance to develop and get the young guys to play along and have meaningful experiences being in highly competitive games. And you're getting that. And Logan Cooley's experiencing that. And Dylan Gunther right now is not very effective on 5-on-5, but he's very effective on the power play. And, his game is getting hindered even more on 5-on-5 because they are aware of him. They want to take him away. And beyond that, the physicality is kind of upping, and he has yet to really show that is something that he's ready to take advantage of, or stick in there with and be a tough guy and deal with. Navigate those waters, I guess is what I'm trying to look at. So no Michelli, and we're seeing Barrett Hayton, and we're seeing McBain and Doan and these guys, and they're all playing in these meaningful games. So the season has done what you set out to do. And so the question is, and you've re-signed Kerfoot, you've re-signed Cole, you resign Mata, so they're back. We've got our returning group. You have 2 rookies that are done with their contracts in the KHL. They're highly regarded, I know, in the organization. Usually Russian players do not want to leave Russia and the KHL to come over and play in the AHL. So what are you going to do about Dmitry Shimashev and Daniel Butt? Right? They're going to have to figure out what they want to do with those 2 players. So they're joining the team next year. But the real question is how do you bolster this team? How do you take it further? Do you believe the blue line is solved? Because next year's team's blue line is pretty much solid. You're going to go Kesselring. You're going Ole Mata. You're going Marino and Dursey and Sergachev and Cole. We have 6 blue liners under contract. They've all played heavy minutes this year. They're all going to be looked to as players that are coming in. So, breaking into the team next year, it's is Maverick Lamoureux going to be one of them? Maybe. Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. What are they going to do about Dmitry Shimashev, who's going to want to come over from, Russia and get time to play on the blue line? So that's what the blue line group's going to look like next year. We already know who the 6 blue liners are going to be. Plus you have, Artem Duda, who certainly is ready and wants to play in the NHL. There just isn't space for him. Not in this organization. Maverick, and he's behind Maverick Lamoureux anyway. And that you've got Dmitry Shimashev, right? So then the other question is well, how do you get Michelli back into the mix? Because you clearly, they must think that he's something. They did not move him at the trade deadline. And he does seem like something. He just had a really bad third year, for sure. Really bad. Yeah, Sparky, I think it's a great call. I don't know. Listen, I think Mitch Marner is kind of more of the same sort of thing that we already have. That's my only concern with Mitch Marner. Obviously, terrific hockey player. But he just feels like, maybe a slightly better version, or, around the same level as Clayton Keller. Maybe slightly better than Clayton Keller. He's in the Clayton Keller, Dylan Gunther, and, goal scorers are great. If you can take as many of those, that would be great. Bukestad, yeah, they did not re-sign Bukestad. He will be a free agent. They did not re-sign Carcone. So, yeah, there's a good chance that neither of them will be on the team. John Tavares coming to the team would be an interesting move. I don't know that Tavares is going to be interested in signing with Utah. I don't think we're close enough. I think he's trying to lift a cup at this stage of his career. But I love the idea. So I agree. I think it's a really awesome center. We've talked about the problem that this team currently has where they've played Schmaltz and Keller together, because Schmaltz and Keller like playing together. They seem to have some chemistry, that, psychic connection with each other. But every center that goes up and plays with those two suddenly has a reduction in their performance. Yeah, Sam Bennett would be a great ad. Obviously, we are not prying him away from Florida. So yeah, I mean, they just need to look at. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. Another reason to cheer against Vancouver. Apparently, Vancouver was like semi-interested in moving on from Elias Pettersson. Like there was talk that they were potentially going to get rid of both JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. I don't know. I mean, would you do like Nick Schmaltz and like that would be a blockbuster trade. You would probably need to do like Michelli, Schmaltz, like a first rounder. Maybe you could get Elias Pettersson for that. 2 first rounders, maybe something like that. Would you be willing to get rid of Keller? You could probably do that. If you did Keller and Michelli, I bet you could get Pettersson for that. That's a big ask, but that gets you a legit center. They're kind of out on him in Vancouver. His age fits the timeline of what we're trying to do here in Utah. Two-way center, harder to come by than a high-scoring winger. I don't know. Fascinating. Make that trade. Take on Pettersson. Maybe you grab Mitch Marner then. I don't know. Anyway, it's fun to do this. But this team they need a couple things to kind of get to the next area. I just think they need a couple. They need to find their Tom Wilson. They need to find their their Brock Nelson, their big tough guy who also scores and is a real enforcer, not like Spicy Tuna, right? Where, because Tuna, like the thing is like everybody's anxious to fight him. Like nobody's afraid to fight that guy. When it comes to Tom Wilson or Ryan Reeves, like nobody wants to fight those guys. Like they're not looking for that fight. People are anxious to fight him. There's no like, oh, if I do something dirty to Logan Cooley, I'm gonna have to deal with Liam O'Brien. You know what I mean? But if you do something dirty to Ovechkin, like you got to deal with Tom Wilson, and you don't want to deal with Tom Wilson. Yeah, like Brock Nelson's great. That would be a fun one. Power forward. Yep, they need a power forward. They need a power forward. So, yeah. Look, the fight tonight, Utah has had, first of all, we've had like a lot of fights. This team has had a lot of fights. I think there's been a lot of effort taken by Utah Hockey Club throughout the season to try to show that they're not going to be pushed around. But every team is coming in and challenging this group and, giving them trouble for all those things. McBain, honestly, the truth is that maybe McBain is the guy that we need to come along. He's had a good season. He has scored way more goals. He's flirting with potentially having a 20-goal season. And that's bonkers. Like, totally bonkers to me that Jack McBain may be a 20-goal scorer in the NHL this year. I didn't think he'd ever be a 20-goal scorer. And there's Jack McBain with an opportunity to potentially get there. Darnell Nurse fighting off with Jack McBain. I thought the fight was it wasn't the kind of fight that necessarily makes me like kind of annoyed. It was one that I thought was meaningful. Utah goes down 3. McBain is trying to pick up the slack, put a little energy into the locker room. Obviously, it didn't translate to the second period, but that's kind of where I was. Honestly, though, if McBain does become he's been playing better as a center, so there's that. There's that. But I do think that McBain, yeah, he's not going to get to 20, but he was on pace for a little while until he went into full check mode on that third line. But he's been really valuable on the third line. And so the question is like, can you get Jack McBain to come along and be those things? How old is Jack McBain? He's young, right? He's 25. So he's entering into kind of where his prime time is. You can't think of The Simpsons every time. You can't not think of The Simpsons every time you hear McBain. Yeah, well, happens. Keller needs to be protected. The thing with Clayton Keller, the only reason I brought that up was just to say, what I was trying to figure out what it would take to get Elias Peterson. That's it. Keller's a good player. He doesn't necessarily play the style of hockey that I love out of my captain, and or players that sort of lead a team to a deep cup run. He does not fit the mold of those things. He's a Robin, not Batman, I guess is kind of my feeling. At the same time, he's on a long-term deal, and every year that the salary cap goes up, the more unmovable and valuable Clayton Keller becomes to Utah. So his value actually is, even though I think he has the highest contract on the team this year, as the coming seasons come along and the salary cap goes up, it's going to create more value for Clayton Keller in the upcoming seasons, because his contract is going to look better and better as time goes on. And again, he's always a threat to be a 30-goal scorer. He's on 2 straight seasons scoring 30 goals. Something only like 12 players are on a 30-goal season goal scoring streak. So he is one of the elite goal scorers in the National Hockey League. But none of the teams he ever plays on win. So I don't know. If he's your best, I guess that's the way I'm thinking about it. If Clayton Keller's your best player, as things currently stand and have stood throughout his career in the NHL, that means you are not a playoff team. So that's my Clayton Keller take. He's awesome. He's a really good player. He shoots well. I wish he shot even more than he already does. But there we are. Yes, we've got 3 more years of Clayton Keller after this, so that's where they are. Hey, take care. Get a good sweat. Sparky, thanks for hanging out again tonight. Scott, it was good seeing you around here again. We will see you again on Thursday night when the Utah Hockey Club take on the Buffalo Sabres in the first of a 3-game homestand. All of the games are super big. They got to get a win against those Buffalo Sabres. We'll see you next time after the buzzer. Until then, take care of yourself.